Welcome to In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, thank you for coming by again. If you're new to the show, every 2 weeks we put an industry expert or a customer in the hot seat for lively discussion, debate, even a little discourse as we try to humanize the digital experience. All aspects of the customer lifecycle are up for discussion, as well as the technologies that used throughout the customer journey. This episode is a part of our privacy and security episode, and I'm actually really excited about this discussion, or maybe a little bit scared about this discussion
Nervous.
On location data and privacy. In the prep, we learned some exciting and exciting in a bad way sort of things that I think will make this a really interesting topic for a lot of people. And Kristy, one of the things that I saw this morning as I was kind of prepping for the show was this Inspector General report from Homeland Security. And they apparently, it was released in September, they were talking about how different agencies had been using a bit of a loophole to get around getting warrants to get location data. Because apparently they had allowed agencies like the FBI and Homeland Security, Border Protection, and all the different agencies, they can buy commercially available data, but they can't track people's location without a warrant. But the location data was available publicly and commercially, so they were buying that and using that as a way to get around the warrants.
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense to me that you can buy publicly available data that includes location data, but they can exclude you from buying location data. I'm not sure I quite understand that whole
Yeah, well,
rule.
and apparently they couldn't. I mean, or they didn't anyway.
It's like your kids trying to find a way around what you just told them they couldn't do, right?
I mean, I think that's exactly it. But, it's a scary proposition if you start to think that through a little bit further. I mean, the point of the whole get the warrant was to protect privacy of people that weren't supposed to be tracked. And basically the Border Patrol, their answer back was, well, we have to do that as a part of it's an important part of our investigation. So we're going to continue to do that.
It might
Okay.
be, but that brings up a whole lot of the other questions that we have today, right? Like, when is it okay and when isn't it? And
Yeah.
what is a real valid reason?
Yeah, it's surprising to me, and I guess I just never really thought about, and I know we can talk about this during the show about we all know about data brokers, but the whole location data broker thing was a little bit of a like, wait, what?
Yeah, for sure. And people that specialize in just location data,
Mhm.
that's like, why? Why are you specializing in location data?
I can tell you why.
Well, right, okay. Money, right, yeah. But it
Exactly.
just seems nefarious in its own right.
Well, I mean, it does, and I think we don't really think about this that much when we think about location data. How many times on your phone you get the little, warning, if it's an iPhone, at least you get a little warning pops up like, this app, can it track you when you're using the app? Can it track you all the
Right,
time? Or you want it not to track you?
right.
I, I mean,
We've had the discussion before about it. It kind of freaks me out that whether I have my phone or not, because I forgot my phone one time, when I get in my car to go to the gym in the morning, the car says commuter route started and it
mhm.
guides me to the gym, which is 9 minutes away. And I'm like, why does my car know this? I
Yeah.
get it if my phone knows it, but why does my car know that?
Well, I mean, to be honest, my phone makes assumptions all the time too, and it gets confused because my home and my office are the same thing, so it doesn't know which one I want to go to.
So much for smart AI, right?
Yeah, it's not that smart. Anyway, oh well, maybe we ought to bring in our guest and
I guess we should. All right. So, Jeff Jockisch is a partner and the chief privacy officer at the PriveTech startup Avantis Privacy. He's an independent data privacy researcher at Privacy Plan. At Avantis Privacy, Jeff helps consumers gain their privacy and overcome pervasive data surveillance. Those words scare me. He
yeah,
helps clients effectuate their privacy rights and take ownership of their personal data before focusing on privacy and certifying as a CIPP/US. Jeff studied organizational behavior at Cornell. He spent 20 years in tech startups, building mortgage information systems and creating search engines. His understanding of data, data science, and data governance is both academic and operational, and his expertise derives from the design of knowledge graphs, work with big data, the creation of taxonomy and classification systems, which I actually know what those are, so I feel really kind
That's
of
good.
accomplished. The management of data quality and the creation of content management systems. Welcome, Jeff.
Yeah,
Well,
welcome.
thank you, Kristy. Michael, glad to be here.
So, I'm just curious, Michael and I got pretty deep in some of this discussion when we were doing the prep, and just on a daily basis, explain the importance of location data privacy and how it impacts just normal people.
Sure. Well, let me lay it on you sort of hard and fast. The way
Don't scare Jody.
Well, the way I think about it is sort of this way. Location information is sensitive, right? It can reveal exactly who you are. We'll go into a little bit more detail as we go on with the episode. Location information is intimate. Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon sort of said it this way. He said, location information can reveal some of the most intimate details of a person's life, whether you've visited a psychiatrist, whether you went to an AA meeting, who you might date even, right? And then the third point is location information can impact your security. If I know your home, your office, all the stops you make, and the paths that you go on to get to these locations, I mean, how valuable is that information to someone who might want to hurt you? Not just physically, but even emotionally. Pretty valuable, right?
So I happen to be one of the lucky people, and there's nobody out there with nefarious plans around my location. So let's assume that's the case. Why do I care? I've always been one of those people that, you know what? Yeah, I'm willing to give up a certain amount of my data to get value out of something else that requires it.
Well, you think that now, right? But that can change sort of on a dime, right? You go on to social media and you say something that somebody interprets the wrong way or they don't really like, and now you may all of a sudden have an enemy. A lot of the clients that we get are actually exactly that kind of person. But
okay, hold on. I need to go delete that post about my neighbors in my yard.
Right? But things can change, right? I mean, the thing that was legal, today could be illegal tomorrow. The thing that you think that you do that is inconsequential could not be inconsequential tomorrow. But even if that's not the case, right? There are so many inferences that people can make about our data that can impact your life that you don't really think about those things. So I was maybe going to talk about this a little bit later, but think about the inferences that can be made from your data. Your location can tell somebody that you went to a particular doctor's office, right? Maybe it was about a health condition, like you have something that's going on with your heart, right? Now, what if your insurance company finds out about that and raises your insurance rates? That just cost you a lot of money.
Wow.
I mean, we think about the phone, and obviously, if you're an iPhone user, at least I know it reminds me quite often that this thing is tracking me, and can it track me in the app or not, or across everything? But what about you mentioned like tracking where I'd go, my doctor's office, whatever. I mean, what about my car? Is that also a concern? I mean, I know certainly I have a connected car. So, I mean, I guess it's tracking data location too.
Yeah, it very much is, right? And that information can also be tied back to your mobile advertising ID, and it's definitely being harvested. In fact, there's a whole lot of hubbub in the privacy world right now that your car may be leaking as much location information as your phone. And yeah, there's a lot of scrutiny now of the auto dealers, the auto manufacturers, that because all of these connected hubs in your car are leaking a lot of personal information, including location data.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't remember opting in, but I mean, I guess I must have at some point in that process.
Yeah.
I mean, unlike my phone, my car does not ask me if it can track me.
Um,
Well, and I think I'm trying to remember, but I have to create a profile on my phone that syncs to my car.
yep, and
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah. No,
problem.
I do
Is
too.
that where that is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's also there, but often those
Mm.
entertainment systems also get your consent in some way that you probably didn't realize,
Mhm.
right? But
Uh,
connecting your phone to your car is also a big problem with
Yeah. I mean,
privacy.
could you talk about inference? I mean, it would know my mobile advertising ID or unique identifier, and so now it puts that together with my car location. Yeah, okay, I
Exactly.
got it. I
That's one of
got
the
it.
things that they connect the two. Yes.
I
Yeah.
guess sorry, I'm going to divert a little bit. What is a mobile advertising ID? Like, that's a
Ah.
thing?
That's a thing, right? It's actually getting phased out a little bit, right? But something else will probably replace it. But a mobile advertising ID, we call that an MAID or a MAID for short. Google has one. They call something different a Google advertising ID. Apple has one. But it's essentially a 36-digit alphanumeric that is specific to a device or set of devices, right? And it's supposed to be sort of anonymous, pseudo-anonymous, so that you could be tracked without sort of giving away your identity. The problem is that it does give away your identity, right? It gets sort of connected to you, gets connected to all these geolocation pieces of information, and it can be very easily unidentified and tied
Yeah.
directly to you.
I mean, you
Thanks,
use
Jeff.
the
Sorry
word
I
inf
asked.
you use the word inference, and I guess that's really the issue here, right? Because you can triangulate across all these different bits of information, and eventually you do tie it to one of my email addresses or
Yeah.
ID or whatever, right? Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so how's the legal landscape evolved with respect to all of the location, data privacy here, but also internationally? Like I took a trip to Japan this year with my son. It never occurred to me that anybody in Japan could track where I was at with my phone. Like I'm a nobody in Japan.
Well, I haven't actually looked at Japan's law. Japan's data privacy law is called APPI. Um, I don't want to sort of opine on that one, but under GDPR, the European privacy law, location data is personal data. It has to either be anonymous, which obviously there's problems with that we just talked about, right? Or
Yeah.
it requires consent to be able to process your location information. In the US, location is becoming more recognized as being personal data. Under CCPA, which was updated
Mm.
as a California law, right?
Yep.
Which was updated recently with the California Privacy Rights Act. Now it considers precise geolocation as sensitive personal information. So you get more rights about that now, and potentially you're supposed to actually have consent to be able to process that. Though I haven't really seen where that's going to go yet, but you technically have more rights about your sensitive geolocation information. We'll see
Hmm.
how that sort of pans out, right? But the efforts really for geolocation have been hampered primarily by what I would call industry misinformation. Claims that your mobile advertising ID attached to this geolocation were anonymous, right? That nobody could figure out who you were. But there's been research that goes back a decade, even longer, that essentially says that if you have four pieces of precise geolocation information, they can figure out who 95% of Americans are with complete accuracy. So give me 5 pieces of location information about you, and I can say it's you with complete certainty.
Yeah.
Location information, like I was here at 4 o'clock, I was there at 5 o'clock, I was over here at 5:15, and then back at this other place at 6.
Yeah.
Well, and my phone's in my house how long, right? I mean, I guess that wouldn't be that difficult to triangulate from my phone to my address to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's half of those
Yeah.
locations are going to be your house, your office, your grocery store, right?
Yep.
And chances are we're going to be able to figure that out. We live in a world of AI and big data and all these massive data sets, right? And it's
Mhm.
easy to be able to figure out that this set of data is going to connect to you or to Michael or to me.
Mm.
It's just not hard any longer. There are companies that their entire business model is re-identification of data. That's all they do.
So, with all this data about us and location data, particularly about us, I mean, are there any good, bad examples of major breaches, issues with location data that have come out?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot. We haven't really focused as much on location data,
Mhm.
so people don't really think of it in that terms, right? But even if you think about the Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal,
Mhm.
that was
Right.
really in part about location data, right? It was unethical use of data from millions of Facebook users without their consent, and they built up psychological profiles to deliver personalized political ads to specific zip codes and
Yeah.
specific users to influence voter behavior during the 2016 presidential election, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I looked at that a lot, but you're right. I didn't really think about the fact that that had to have been included geolocation data.
yeah, right.
What
Um,
what did, I mean? Do we learn anything out of that, or any of the other examples that you've
Nobody
had?
really, we learn anything, don't do it. But I
Yeah,
mean, did it change anything? Not really, not then. It's starting to change things now. Um, Another example that's ongoing is predictive policing.
mm,
Um, you know, uh, there's also some other things that are happening now. There's actually just some information that came out. There are about 60,000 geofence warrants that are issued each year to Google, just to Google, from police departments around the world, around the country. So cops are essentially saying, "Hey, a crime was committed, and we need Google data to be able to solve this crime." So
mm,
they're saying something happened here in this location. We don't know who did it, but Google, give us the mapping information of any phone that's been in this area, so we can figure out who did it.
mm.
Now, that can be valuable, right? I mean, if a murder was committed and we want to know who was there, maybe we can figure it out. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm just saying that it happens, right? And Google, based upon this court order, is having to give up your data
Mhm.
oftentimes, right? And you may have just been in the vicinity. It wasn't like you committed the murder, right? But now
Right.
your data is getting scooped up in this search for the criminal. Right?
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday about a serial killer in Long Island that was unsolved for like 13 years, and they finally used the location data from the cell towers to triangulate and find what area the person lived in, and they were able eventually to narrow it down to that actual person. So I mean, I can see there's some positive things there, but then I guess you have to look at the secondary damage of the people that are also scooped up in that weren't involved in anything.
Right. Well, one of the questions here is it good or bad? The question is, where do we draw the line? Right.
Mm.
Right.
Some research that was done. I don't remember if it was by NPR or was somebody. Somebody, I have to look that up. But one of the warrants that was submitted was for a purse snatcher in a supermarket. Right. Do we
Mm.
really need to be doing a geofence warrant for that?
Good question. I don't
Serial
know.
purse snatcher, maybe?
I mean, okay, right. So
No
here's the
pun
question,
intended.
right?
Uh,
so
interesting.
I so I guess when it comes to how they get this information, we've all heard of data brokers, but Michael threw a term at me that I'd never heard before on Friday, and it was a broker that focuses on location data. And then I think you just said that there are also people who make a living trying to re-identify a person from location data, right? Like reverse engineer who you are. How do these data brokers work, and what do they actually do with the data?
So location data brokers focus on getting information from a variety of different sources, right? The ones that originally sort of popped up were connecting to apps and helping apps monetize themselves. So weather apps, flashlight apps, any kind of gaming apps, right? Kid downloads an app and the
Mm,
kid wants to get the app for free. And so the app says, okay, well, I'll put ads on here, right? Well, the ads, right, have a hard time making money, right? But if the application can grab the user's location information,
mm,
right, and sell that back to the advertiser, they can
Oh
make a
my
lot
God.
of money, right?
mm,
So that's what they're doing, right? They're
mm,
grabbing as much personal information as possible when you download the app, sending that back to the advertisers, right?
mm,
Advertisers sell that, right, to the location data broker, who aggregates all this information up and then sells it off to whoever wants to buy it, right? Now, if they were just selling it to other advertisers, maybe that's not a terrible thing. But the problem is they can sell it to anybody, right? We just talked about, right? The government's buying it, right? Foreign governments can buy it. A stalker could potentially buy a swath of data and figure out who their target was.
Wow.
Anybody can buy this stuff, right? Technically, right? I'm not saying that it's easy as a stalker to go in and buy it from some of these companies. Some of them try to have controls, right? They write their contracts so that it's maybe hard to do it. Some of them have pretty decent quality control over their sales. Some of them have very crappy controls, right? But it is possible to buy this stuff, and it's not very expensive.
I don't know. It conjures up an image of, a guy standing in a dark alley, save for one street light with a trench coat. Like, okay, who's taking what?
Want to buy some location data? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I sort of remember like one, you were talking about applications. I think it was like WeatherBug or something that was such a big location data, just hoovered up all that data.
Yeah,
and
a lot of them got in trouble. I mean, almost all the weather apps were selling location data. You have to actually, if you look at it in a broader sense, not just location data, right? But all data brokers, right? And actually sort of all businesses. If you actually step back and just look at businesses in general, right? The reason there is so much trade in our personal data is because every business has realized that instead of just selling cars, right, or just selling apps, or just selling laundry detergent, if they collect our personal data, they've got a whole another revenue stream that they can make by also selling the personal data that they collect when they do whatever else they normally do, right? And can make them a hell of a lot of money, right? So car manufacturers are saying, well, I can sell you a car, but they can also make a whole lot of money by selling your data, right, that I grab from the car when I sell it to you.
So many mistakes.
It's not an insignificant amount of money. It's a lot of money, right? The data broker industry is someplace between $200 and $400 billion a year.
Wow.
You're kidding.
No, wow. Just the location data is at least 20 billion, right? We think it's more like 100 billion.
Huh. Okay, that is a little staggering number.
Yeah, a lot of people buying my data.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that brings up the next sort of set of questions around. Okay, what can I do about it? Like, what are the best practices? And Stephen, yeah. So, what criteria would help us draw the lines? I mean, can I just turn the data off on my phone and I'm fine? Like, what do I do?
Well, let's talk about what you can do first, right? So first thing to do is to turn off this mobile advertising ID, right? Because that's where most of the information gets aggregated around that MAID. That's how most of the information sort of gets sent to these data brokers and how they sort of like connect it to you. So if you turn off that mobile advertising ID, that can help. You can go into your Android phone and turn that off. On Apple, the ATT framework allows you to turn that off pretty easily. And about 70% of Apple users have turned it off globally, though a lot of them turn it back on for individual apps, which somewhat defeats the purpose, right? However, right, that's not the only thing you want to do. You probably should turn on a lot of the privacy settings for all of your phone applications. A lot of people think that they're going to get personalized ads and that's somehow going to benefit them. They get personalized coupons that are going to save them a lot of money. The problem is that they're probably losing at least that much money because the prices can also get personalized the opposite direction. If they figure out who you are, they can charge you more because they know that you really want something or you really need something, right? Or we talked about how insurance can go up because they understand something about you that you didn't realize that they knew, right? Yeah. So that personalization really doesn't benefit you in any positive way. It probably hurts you more than it benefits you. So you want to turn off all those privacy settings on your phone. That will help a lot in this data collection. You also want to then go in and wipe out your location history. Google has, location map history and location history that they collect on the platforms. Same thing with Apple. And if you can, I suggest you go to Avantis, my company, and purge your location history. We have a way that we can actually go to those location brokers and tell them to wipe out that location history that they've collected. Because if you just turn it off inside your phone and say stop collecting it and tell Google and Apple to get rid of it, right? That doesn't get rid of what they've already collected. These location data brokers are still sitting out there, right? So you have to actually purge that separately, and we can help you with that. Or you could go to them individually, like, asking data brokers to delete your data, but it's hard to find them and hard to delete, and we can help with that, right? But even if you do all of that, right, they can still potentially track you. There are lots of ways for them to get around the platforms, right, and be able to grab your information, your location information from inside their apps and send it, secretively out to an API. There are ways that they can do that. They can do, browser fingerprinting. There's different ways. And we could talk about the real-time bidding stuff. I think you wanted to ask about that as well.
Okay. So example, my husband right now is driving. He drives almost every week, 3 out of 4 weeks a month, from our home in Connecticut down to one of the offices that he visits somewhere around the Washington, D.C. area. And so instead of calling him while he's driving, I'll jump on Life 360 and see where he's at.
Yep.
So if I turn off my location data, I can no longer do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are different pieces, right? There are different technologies within your phone that can track you. There's GPS, right? There's also Wi-Fi. There's also Bluetooth. And there's different pieces of Wi-Fi that they can use different ways to sort of triangulate, cell tower triangulation as well. Yep. So there's all kinds of different ways. So even if you turn off GPS, it doesn't actually make you location safe. Okay. There's all kinds of different ways.
Well, I mean, what about cars too? I mean, like I know where the settings are on my phone, but like, can I? I mean, I guess there's a big benefit for my car knowing where it is if we break down or have an accident or something. So
your car's probably got separate, GPS and Bluetooth receivers inside of it, right?
Yeah.
As well, right? There's also automated license plate readers all over the country now that are going to track your license plate and read it.
Oh, you're right. Or your Easy Pass, right? Or
Easy Passes.
Oh yeah, that's true. I totally forgot about my Easy Pass. Okay, just forget it. My location data is just going to be there. Like,
yeah. If you're driving a car, it's pretty hard. You'd have to get like an old, 1970s beater that doesn't have any tech inside of it. You got some way to block,
and then not use your phone for directing.
Right,
we're back to
GPS,
paper maps.
Right, but you can't print out the paper. You can't print out the Google directions because it'll know where you're going.
No, it'll know where you're going. Exactly.
Oh my gosh! Wait, like my head's going to explode.
It is really hard to stay location safe.
Yikes!
Wow. So where do you see the privacy for this evolving over the next 5 years? Like what trends should we be aware of?
It's pretty tough, actually. Google and Apple are going to clamp down on a lot of this, right? This external stuff, but it's not going to be enough. And even as they're sort of clamping down on these external data collection methods, they're actually collecting more about us themselves, right? So that they can essentially share it. So they're helping to some extent, but they're also becoming more of a data broker themselves. Not a data broker in the sense that they're a third party, but they're a first party, and they're collecting more and more about us themselves, right? Which is a bit of a threat. And as I said, firms aren't going to actually give up on trying to collect that stuff surreptitiously, whether it's directly through your phone or through another mechanism, right? They can actually go out and scrape your location information from things that you post on social media. Right? If you post stuff, just random texts, right? They can actually intuit, especially with the new AI stuff that's coming out, right? Where you're going just from things that you say or pictures that you post. I've got actually a whole post that I did on social media on LinkedIn about how they can look at the backgrounds of your photos and figure out where you are. Seriously, just by looking at the landscape, the buildings, sometimes sign, how one building is next to another building, and this one's got this kind of architecture and this kind of architecture. The sun's in this angle, right? They can actually figure out where you are specifically.
All right, from now on, I'm using Midjourney or Dolly to replace all my backgrounds before I post them.
Yeah, I mean, it is seriously scary. Seriously.
Yeah, that is scary. I mean, we did a show, the last show actually, talking about browsers that are made for privacy and security protection, and search engines too, like DuckDuckGo I know has both, and Zoho has a browser that we were talking to a person from there. They have a privacy-focused browser. I mean, can you help with? Does that help you with location data?
It does, using privacy tech like DuckDuckGo. StartPage has a really good privacy-sensitive browser, search engine. Privacy browsers help a lot, because what it's doing is it's actually stripping away a lot of the metadata that gets sent whenever you do a search. So it doesn't generally know who you are. It helps a lot. And that actually sort of goes into what we were going to talk about with the real-time bidding process and the ad stream.
Yeah. So
there's a real big lawsuit that the Irish Civil Liberties Council has going. It's actually against the IAB, the Internet Advertising Bureau, and Google. But it really could apply to almost all the ad tech industry. And essentially what it says is that this technology is leaking our location information, as well as a lot of other information, every time we search on the web. So when you load up a website, a bunch of ads pop up on that content, right? And every time one of those ads pop up, right, your personal information gets shared with about 20 different advertisers. Not just the person who gave you the ad, but 19 other ones as well.
The bids, yeah.
Right? And so it doesn't have your name on it, Michael or Kristy, right? But it has your mobile advertising ID, right? Some location information about where you are, as well as a bunch of other, data, right? And so advertisers get this information, and you can also sort of pretend to be an advertiser, right? And just collect all this information. And there are companies that do that. And then they sort of create profiles of all these MAIDs, and then go to one of these other companies to sort of figure out who that person is and add that to their customer profile. So now they know, right, that you just sort of searched for a Mazda coupe, right? Or you searched for a bathroom detergent, or you searched for something like this, right? And they know where you were, right? And all this information over time builds up. They can create a massive profile on you, and they know also where you were and where you went.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah.
In some ways, like, I feel like I kind of want that. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the TikTok where the girl creates her murder binder. So, if I ever get murdered, talk to these people, check in this place for my body, right? Like, and I watch a little bit too much true crime probably, but I kind of like that people know where I'm at in case something does happen. But then again, it could also feed into something happening, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about all this.
Well, we should think about that, right? Because there are reasons to want to share your information. I mean, Google has a really good app called like Privacy, see what it was called, the personal safety app, right? Where you can actually share your information. Like say you're going to walk home alone, or you want to go someplace and you want to share your information with your husband or your kids, right? And there are reasons to want to share your locations for safety, right?
Right.
That's not a bad idea. The whole idea behind Life 360 is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lawsuit against them right now for selling that information, right? So they're providing this free service.
You're killing me.
They're selling it to location brokers, right? So now that information on your kid potentially or your husband, right, is now in the hands of a location data broker, and they could be selling it to some nefarious actor.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the economics of the data world have changed so dramatically. Company behavior, agencies, government agencies, that sort of thing, because of both the availability of that data, the ability to aggregate it, and the ability to sell it in a lot of different places.
Okay, so good question, Steve LeMay.
Yeah.
How precise? So if I see my husband is on the Merritt Parkway north of Milford, when I look at him, how precise is that? Or is he already 30 miles down the road?
So it depends upon the tracking tech, certainly, right? And it's a really good question about what is precise geolocation. There are some, I think the law in California says something like precise geolocation is less than 1,250 feet. I may have that wrong, right? But we need to figure out what that number is, right? And how precise it has to be to actually be identifying, right? I mean, if you have a weather app and the weather app is just in your zip code, maybe that's okay, right?
Yeah.
But if it's actually down to like the house level where it can figure out exactly where you live, maybe that's not okay.
Yeah.
I'm not against location data writ large. I'm against personally identifying information that's going to cause a problem, right? Especially for some of my clients.
Yeah.
Right? There's got to be a way that advertisers can get some value out of location data without it being a real threat to people as well, though.
It's kind of the problem of once you can, if you're segmenting people into groups in an area, a larger area, I mean, that's not that bad, right? But if you can individualize that, like if it identifies me, then that's where the problem is.
Right.
Right.
Right. But then again, in the case of that Long Island case that you were talking about, that's how they caught a guy and kept him from killing more women. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, back to Stephen's earlier point, like where's that line? Where is the line to say it's okay for these purposes, but as soon as you go here, you've gone too far?
Well, I mean, even that government thing I talked about in the beginning, Jeff, it's the same kind of issue, right? I mean, like I can see it solves a crime. That's one thing. But if you're using it to harass immigrants in a particularly not, positive way that the law supports, I don't know.
Well, maybe, I mean, ideally, if we could actually control that precision, right, by use case, right, you could collect the very precise information, right, and then it would just blur out the decimal points that were not available for that use case, right?
Yeah.
But do we live in that world? I don't think we do, right?
No,
not yet, at least, right?
No. And I mean, I one of the companies I worked for before I started this firm, we sold buyer intent data, and it's it's an interesting from a business perspective, really valuable information, right? That this company's looked at your product X number of times and your competitor's product X number of times over the last week or whatever. But now, like recently, I had an experience where that came back to just annoy me because I had looked at some profile that apparently picked up my intent data, only it wasn't intent. I was doing research. That's what I do.
Right.
And yet I got, an angry BDR that wouldn't leave me alone, who kept trying to you must be interested. You looked at, I'm like, no, I don't. I mean, it has a dark side, I guess is my point.
Yeah. I've had that happen to me too, where an ad will chase you around forever and you can't get rid of it. But sometimes it is valuable, certainly. Right. And I was thinking about sort of like shopping behavior too, right? I mean, retail outlets really love the fact that they can tell if you walk by their store, right? If you don't have precise data, that's really not very valuable to them.
Right.
But if it is precise, then now you know exactly where I am. So there's this trade-off based upon the use case, whether that should be useful.
I mean, we haven't really mentioned this, but I also work with an IoT company, and obviously, a lot of that has to do with track trace. It has to do with location data, and depending on the technology inside or outside, and depending on the technology, extremely accurate, like to the bin or to the shelf or whatever. I mean, how does that play into this? Is that also a risk from an IoT perspective?
Oh, I think it has to be. I think the question is how can we mitigate it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm still not sure how I feel about all of this. Like all of these conveniences. Like I know, even just when I walk into the grocery store, like you were just saying, Jeff, I walk into the grocery store and the little thing pops up and says, "Hey, here are the specials today." I'm like, "Oh, well, thank you. Yes, I do want that." Like, it is helpful, right? So.
Well, one thing I did want to bring up that we talked about sort of in the pre-conference we had was, people talk about how when they talk about, cauliflower and then, they walk away and half an hour later they get an ad about cauliflower.
That's true.
How the phone's listening. And I was telling Michael that actually is probably not your phone listening to you. It may actually be in the future, but it's probably not actually listening to your voice and hearing the keyword cauliflower. Though Siri maybe listens, but or you know,
or that other one that I won't say out loud because it'll talk to us right
Because it'll
now.
talk, yeah.
yeah, right, yeah, right. But anyway, right, what's actually happening more likely is that if the person you're talking to, right, and your phone are next to each other for a significant amount of time, the tech companies actually know this, right? And so if you're actually talking to me about cauliflower, right, and our phones are next to each other for a while, they will share our interest list between each other, right?
No way.
Maybe and we're talking about cauliflower because I like cauliflower, and now all of a sudden you see an ad about cauliflower, right? Because they shared my interest list with you, right? And I'll see some things that you're interested in, right? And that pops up because now our interest lists are a little bit shared because they think, well, we're close to each other. We probably have some shared interests now.
Right.
Oh, wow. That's dangerous.
I mean, that whole inference issue, that actually comes out in kind of the scary part of the precision with which they can figure out what it is you're doing or not doing or whatever.
Right. And that's a Bluetooth location thing that they're using there. Right. That's another location thing that people don't think about, right?
No, I leave Bluetooth on all the time because like my AirPods won't work if I don't leave Bluetooth on.
Right.
Yikes.
And it doesn't connect to my car if I don't have Bluetooth on.
And it doesn't connect to my car. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay. So Wi-Fi can detect your location.
Yeah.
Bluetooth can detect your location. GPS can detect your location.
Yeah. And when your cell phone carrier is on, right, it triangulates
the cell tower. Yeah.
Right.
Cell towers to figure out where you are.
That's just insane. So what are these people going to do with all of this data about me? Like, assuming there's no nefarious purpose, right? And somebody figures out who I am, where I shop, where I go to the gym, how old my kids are, what they do for fun, and where my husband travels every week. Like, what are they going to do with that information?
Well, I mean, advertisers are going to buy it, right?
Yeah.
But it's scary how big these profiles are getting. I mean, companies like Axiom, right, one of the largest data brokers, create these huge, massive profiles on us. I mean, I've seen them claim to have 3,000, 10,000 data points on, a billion people.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I did after the Cambridge Analytica thing, I actually did a little bit. I wrote a research report on it. And one of the things that, and I don't know remember the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it was 5 data points from Facebook, and they knew more about you than your parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. That's awesome. So, okay, now I'm starting to feel a little like Jodie Spencer. I'm throwing everybody's phones in the refrigerator.
Are we looking for a campsite in the middle of Montana or something? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Well, we started talking about how the government, is buying this data, right? But if you think about it, right? I'm saying right too often. Big Brother, we were sort of concerned about the government spying on us and collecting all this information. They don't have to do that because these corporations are creating these massive profiles on us, and all they have to do is just go buy it whenever they need it.
Right.
And that's really the sort of the flipped script, I guess, that's sort of happening. The government doesn't actually have to collect the data because corporations are collecting it. And they're just circumventing the Fourth Amendment by going to the data brokers and buying it whenever they need it.
Well,
and I mean, that's in the U.S. where we do have some protection, but then that brings up that other topic of what if it's not in the U.S.? What if it's, in a country that perhaps doesn't have any protections?
Yeah.
Right. And what if the data location, like the article you shared right before we came on air, what if that data location is the data location of people in the military that are in places that don't have data protection?
Yeah.
That's not good. There should be something that restricts that. Right?
I mean, that is actually one of the initiatives is the battlefield, tracking the soldier accurately on the battlefield. But that's a double-edged sword too now.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Well, we're using that intelligence, on our side too. A lot of the information we get out of, the battle in the Ukraine and probably, in Israel right now, we can actually figure out troop movements by figuring out what their soldiers are doing by social media posts at times, right? But they can do the same thing back to us because they can buy that information as well. So we need to protect our soldiers more effectively.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think that's about all the time we have today, Jeff, but you survived the hot seat. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And scared the hell out of the rest of us.
Scared the bejesus out of all of us. Yes. Thanks, Jeff. If you are watching and you love this topic or you think you have what it takes to be in the hot seat on another topic, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you. That's your In the Hot Seat episode for today. Thanks for being with us this week. I'm Kristy Tupper.
And I'm Michael Fauscette. Tune in next time for different faces, different topics, and different perspectives as we put someone else in the hot seat.